Coming to you live from Multifamily Studios. This is part of a recap to the Multifamily Innovation Advisory Council meetings. We're calling it Loop, Feedback Loop, Loop 1, Episode 1. I'm joined here with Kerry Kirby. He's chair of the technology as part of the Multifamily Innovation Council. My name is Patrick Antrim. I'm the founder of Multifamily Leadership and happy to join you here with Kerry Kirby. Kerry, welcome in.
Hey, great to be here, Patrick.
Now, before we got on here, you told me you voted. Let's go back to that again. Prove it. Can you prove that?
Yeah. Here's my little I voted sticker that you get. And
okay.
I was there when the polls opened at 6 o'clock. I think I got there at 5:59 a.m. So
nice. And
did my civic duty.
You did. And you know what we need to do is we need to get more of our customers that rent apartments to do that. I'm just curious, anybody, if they've did anything to either facilitate that or encourage or inspire people to vote. Listen, this is an episode that we had every week as part of the Multifamily Innovation Advisory Council. We meet nationally all over the country in a Zoom meeting. Every week. We've been doing it for a couple of years now. And these are private meetings with owners and operators. And our goal there is to extract the insights and challenges and opportunities that multifamily owners and operators have going on in their world today. And our goal is to extract those challenges and build content and programming that helps them, life gets better. They either achieve those objectives. Right now, over the next 12 to 18 months, those objectives are going to be very different than they've been in the past. And so that's how we produce our programming and content. And every year at the Multifamily Innovation Summit, those council members will fly out and join us at an in-person event. And we'll have some time together once a year for that. But in between that meeting, Kerry and I get to spend time with these owners and operators. And our goal with this podcast and this episode, we're calling the Loop, this is Loop 1, is a feedback loop. And so inside these meetings, they're private. We don't share or publish those meetings. The members get access to that, but we don't publish those conversations as they're peer-to-peer, and we're working through a lot of different things in that confidence. However, it's important that as we move through these trends and insights that we report out to the industry so people can build better products, raise capital faster, position their business differently. If they can learn from some of these trends or insights. We don't make product recommendations. We're not a trade association. We don't pull together, groupthink and things like that. But what we're doing here is, we're bringing together people that share the same ideas around what's possible for multifamily. So, Kerry, welcome in. And with that set up, tell me a little bit about your first takeaways from our last meeting for the audience here.
Yeah, so I think, what I'm hearing is there's a little concern. The markets are softening a little bit in different parts of the country. And people are starting to say, hey, we might need to operate different. We might need to scale back some costs. We have some staff that we don't think have been through some of the challenging times. So there might be some retraining that we need to do on how to look at things a little different to keep our costs in check. So I'm seeing a little concern on where the markets are going. We are certain in uncertain times. You got rents pulling back, but we still have hyperinflation going on where insurance cost is going up, common area utilities, everything, even a pool cleaner, I think, is either doubled or tripled from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and so when I opened I'm trying to find my volume on this thing. When I opened the show, I probably have it upside down. When I opened the meeting on Friday, I talked about my trip to Connect in Phoenix and how there was business model disruption. And the topic was business model disruption and testing the status quo. So what are we doing to move through that? And let me click here. And on the onset, if you haven't been to Phoenix, I recommend you go tour the Connect building in downtown Phoenix. It's something to see. If you're joining us at the Multifamily Innovation Summit in December, we'll be touring you there. So that's one way to get a free pass and go with some really great leaders. But when I was touring this building, we did a little documentary interview with the owner on how they shaped up the vision for this and how they thought through things and tested assumptions about what could be done and removing friction from certain elements of the renting experience and providing community. And a couple of takeaways from that conversation was they were speaking to their residents, as we call them, customers, as members. So, and Carrie, I've been talking to you about this forever. You're a software developer, but multifamily has been a SaaS billing machine for years.
Mm-hmm.
We just never really figured it out, how to get the recurring, automatic, right? We're starting to learn that now. A testing of the assumption of like the short-term rental, just in one building, having the opportunity to have some select units into the flex space and the short-term rental that's providing more value for people that are coming into Phoenix looking for hotels on the short term with the full kitchen and washer and dryer at less the cost than on a hotel, right, in the same building. And then the co-living, which was fascinating to me, is like as you look at student housing as the escalation of that journey, that customer, having a 3-bedroom unit and having each unit rented out, each bedroom rented out as an individual unit with one kitchen. Saving the construction costs, allowing them to build less space and test all the assumptions where brokers and investors are probably going, how are you doing this for this square footage and this price? And so your mind kind of starts to rethink things. And then the business, commerce, and events, so bringing co-working to this area, whereas before you would look at this as a clubhouse, right? And now they've got an unlimited access to unlimited memberships, like the fitness model, right? You have 5,000 members, but you can only have 800 people in one room. That model with co-working being in one building is pretty interesting. And then obviously integrating art and commerce, retail, and events, bringing in community events that impact and improve the lives of the people that are sharing the time there. So anyway, we opened up with that. And the takeaway, was, so let's say you have an existing property. How are we thinking the clubhouses that we have that have been built, 15, 20 years ago in some cases? Council members mentioning we can probably find a better use, right? And the trend, seeing others converting these to co-working spaces. I'll leave it at that, Carrie, if you want to step in and add any thoughts, but that was like the big idea was like 25% of what we do is about like what's coming, what's next, but 75% of what we do in the council is here's where we are, here's where the current challenges are, and how do we knock these down? And that is accelerating because of the current market that we're in. So anyway, giving all that information and takeaway, what did you think?
First off, I'm going to be excited to go tour Connect Phoenix because it's definitely disrupting the status quo in the current model. But yeah, I think it's, we have a lot of variety of operators in the Multifamily Advisory Council and different asset types. And we do have people that have properties and they say, hey, we have the traditional clubhouse model. Nobody comes in and uses it anymore. What do we do with it? And I think the consensus is remote working's here to stay, hybrid working's here to stay. And people just want to get out of their apartment if they're working from home and sometimes be around people a couple of days a week. And that co-working space is kind of the latest and greatest. I don't think it's going away. It's been kind of one of those things. If you go back and look at WeWork, it was hot, then it cooled off, and now it's hot again. But I think that market is definitely here to stay, and I think that's an excellent use to look at these older clubhouses and how can you repurpose them without a lot of costs, because I started this up with, we're hearing a lot of cost concerns, and create some co-working space models. And I actually have some ideas for that it would add an amenity that would be more sought after in today's market.
Yeah, so if you're just joining us, we're talking about business model disruption and testing the status quo as part of the Multifamily Innovation Advisory Council feedback loop. This is a report back out to the industry about some of the conversations we're having inside these meetings. And so, Carrie, to your point, having all of this sort of, fresh ideas and fresh insights, and one of the council members mentioned, how do you even think about valuing, an asset like that, right? And then, what are you comparing it to? But also, how do you finance it? What lenders are really interested in taking on those types of risks and opportunities, and the whole capital stack. How do you get that patient capital? We did have also another member talk about how, really managing that tension between, are you an innovator, and are you patient with your timeline of getting that return on these sort of innovative strategies? It could be just technology. It doesn't have to be these other strategies around co-working and stuff. Or are you really flipping this, and you have a shorter term timeline, and you're exiting in 3 to 5 years? And of course, with the capital scenario in play today, that's going to be a little bit more troubling as variable debt takes shape, and operators are squeezed to find ways to keep more value. I did hear a council member also talk about their focus on even the workforce asset class, and how, measuring and thinking through how are we really even measuring what they're willing to adopt, what they're willing to take on, and how far they're willing to go on new, really interesting products or technologies in the market. And really looking through the decision process of when to bring it in to your organization, and what benefit does it contribute to the resident. Really, that's the thinking process. As you're out there and you've got this really cool product that you've built, this is what's happening inside the minds of the customer you're trying to sell into. You may not be thinking that. They're thinking this. We hear people talking about moratoriums on purchases, regardless of the efforts that you put into trying to sell. They're not really interested in learning inside sales conversations as much as they have been in the past, because that was all that was available to them. And then we had another council member, and step in anytime, Carrie. I have a bunch of notes here, but we had another council member say, and I wrote it down: who we believe we are drives the decisions we make. And I was attending OpTech here last week, and I had another council member come up to me, and we had shared a coffee. And it was really refreshing, because the feedback of the contribution that we're making in this council between members, it's really about what they do with each other around sharing ideas and coming up with strategies to block and tackle sometimes, or maybe communication strategies with their employees on how to think through a different thing. But in many cases, it's been refreshing, almost like a weekly touch point of, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy with my thoughts and my ideas. Other people think also this is possible, because sometimes we're working in systems of success, I call them, where a lot of people have gone before us, have made a lot of wealth doing it one way. And then here we have this new idea or insight into a new way to do something. And you're not alone. And so this becomes a really tight community for that. And then so back to the point the council member made, which was who we believe we are drives the decisions we make. And I think that's important to think through, like us as a company, or you as a company. Who are you as a company? And I mentioned the other member said, are you long-term? Do you think, are you a developer? Do you think through? Do you hold long-term? Are you own manage? And that's who you are. Or are you third party and you have multiple providers, multiple investors, multiple strategies, multiple timelines? Who are you as a company, and how will you arrive at these decisions, so anyway, we need to understand who we are as an organization. I think through, like, Carrie, you've said no to a lot of great things because you're on point to what's really useful in building great tech. So tell me what your thoughts are around really getting clarity around those values.
I think, what I got out of that conversation was, look, there are things that people have different strategies, be it I'm short term, I'm going to get in this property, I'm going to fix it up, and I'm out in 3 to 5 years. And then we have some people that are long term holders and owners and look down the path. But I think the consensus is back to, who we are is along the way. If you're going to be in here, even if you're a short term guy and you're going to hold for 3 to 5 and get out, you're going to go into something else. So you're kind of perfecting, what is that package that I'm going to bring? What am I going to bring? If that's what my company's about, when I come into a property, what am I bringing to the table? Is it, hey, I've got this great technology stack. I've been able to automate these different processes and I can utilize my staff better. I can weather some downturns better. So I think that the general consensus is we have to know who we are, what we bring to the table, not only to our investors, but also the residents. Why do people want to rent from us? What are we going to do different? If we're moving rents, what value are we bringing to make those rents even movable? And I think that's kind of where everybody's coming from. Another point that was brought up that you touched on is there are some people don't want to be inundated with stuff anymore, and they don't want to be sold to. They want to be educated. What does this really, really do? And what's it going to do for me? What's the difference it's going to make in the property? More than ever, people are looking at return on investment. It's not, wow, there's a new shiny object. I want one of those. It's, what can this thing really do for me? You have a case study. Do you have some stats on what it's doing for other people that are using it? And if it's something new, can I pilot it? And, I'll give you an opportunity, Mr. Vendor, to try it out. But, I want a free pilot on it, and let's knock some bugs out of it together, which I think is a great opportunity for any vendor in the market with a new product. So I think we're hearing some of the wants that our members feel are missing in the market.
Yeah, and to the point of the business side of things, pro formas that they're managing to were put together in a time that things were much better in some scenarios, right? Yeah. And this variable debt, a lot of stressors coming at the owners. How are we going to see through distributions? Where are you going to stack cash to reserve up for things? And you mentioned earlier about moving rents. We heard one owner moving rents without making improvements, right? So that's been a great market condition that's been off demand, but now we're not making any unnecessary improvements to get to the rent, right? And really thinking through what can be delayed, what can be done in-house, and every expense, and even mentioned on the daily, being scrutinized. So really thinking through, like, when you're jumping on a call with somebody, asking them to spend money, this is the world that they're living through. Maybe not on your call. There's the short talk and the fun talk, and hey, we've got this really interesting thing, and it's going to improve your NOI. Well, I mean, I've heard that all 20 years. I've been hearing that, right? So what they're hearing is they're looking at their loan docs and they're looking at the ratios, the DSCR number. They're looking at the things that are going to materially change their business. And you've got to be able to step into those conversations in a way that reduces complexity, helps them, manage through these elements as much as take advantage of opportunities ahead. But I did hear pulling back on improvements, the stacking of the cash to prepare the readiness of dealing with uncertainties, or at least the perceived value of them, right? And then earlier on, you mentioned a little bit that we picked up from the meeting, which was a lot of the on-site employees, Carrie, were recruited and trained and maybe even promoted to even high-level positions that have not worked through this type of management. They haven't been in situations where the owners or executives are saying no to things because of certain cash positions. They may not understand that either, right? So there may be some upsets in those tensions as well.
And I think I heard one of our members talk about we're going to get everybody back together and start retraining our on-site staff on everything from unit turns. We don't want to cut anything out, but let's revisit. What are we doing on unit turns? What can we do better? What can we be more cost effective at? So it's, where I don't want to use the word blank checkbook. It's never been a blank checkbook, but where things were a little more fluid, maybe. Again, market concerns. Let's look at this in a different light. How can we bring some of the costs down? And as you pointed out, there were a lot of acquisitions made. There are a lot of financing vehicles out there. And if you're doing a acquisition rehab, maybe you were on a shorter term loan, or you had a great rate and it reset in 3 years. And some of those things are happening now. And as we see, the interest rate hikes are just keep coming. And though 3/4 of a point at a time might not seem like much, if you have a larger property, maybe $30-40 million debt piece on it, 3/4 of a point's game changing for you. So there's a little bit of that going on also. So I think that staffs are concerned, not only the current state of the labor market, but having them properly trained for what we need to do and what you need to look for to keep up a very close eye on the bottom line going forward.
Right, investment management. And, we don't want to speak too much as we work together through these conversations and too general. I mean, each investment business is structured in its own unique way. And if nothing else, you're empowered to, think for yourself, right? And in many cases, ignore all the noise, ignore the trends in the charts and the news and what you may hear, and just the thinking process of how you approach what you do in the business, in my experience, has been able to travel the farthest. And the reason why is each investment is structured the way that your investors want it to play out, right? And so when you see a chart on LinkedIn, or you see someone talking about something, it's what worked for them. All right. But we've got to think about what works for us, what works for you in the scenario that you're in. But most importantly, and what was written down here, which is like, who we believe we are drives the decisions we make. It's a powerful statement, because what's most important out of these conversations is how you think through these challenges, not what you end up doing or the advice of someone else. It's like, that may be another way to look at it. Let's see, we've got a question or a comment here. I would love to see more long-term leases to help secure the back door. Okay, positive side effects: less turnover costs, more predictable, easier decentralized efforts, stabilizes cash flow, less work churn, happier work environment for employees' retention, and a way better community. Why not? Max, number one, Max, I think you're with G5. Love the comment. And what a powerful statement. If I can take some time to follow up on that, I'd love to, because part of the Multifamily Innovation Advisory Council does two things. Carrie, stand by, because you've heard this a million times. We have something that guides the way that we work through things. It's called Think First. So if you think about when Steve Jobs launched the iPad, it was well, here's an iPad right here. He had no vision of it being this for me when he launched it with photos, email, and I think it was images, right? Like that was it. But he was launching it in a war against, it was Apple or PC. Remember those commercials? And what he did, created a whole new category of a screen. And he said, when he got on that stage, do we really have more time for another screen in our lives? And he got us to think about something entirely different than what it's always been. It's always been this desktop, PC, in-home, laptop, whatever. And he created something right in the middle. And that launched a whole new marketing strategy called Think Different. So what we do is we take that mindset and then we bridge it over to another mindset, which you're seeing play out right now, which is first principles thinking. Now, most engineers, are clear about a framework to build and design things, but first principles thinking, if you just go on YouTube and get educated on it, it's not something I'll spend here taking time doing, but it's what Elon Musk uses to disrupt industries, right? And so the automotive makers that we've all grown up driving cars of, where there's a steering wheel in front of us and it's gasoline, never, even the smartest people in the industry that created the vehicle and the production of it, didn't see potential around electric vehicles. They didn't see the batteries because they cost too much. So they thought in linear ways, which is like someone else did it this way, so I'll just do it a little differently. Well, first principles thinking requires you to really break things down to their original form, right? And build up from there. Like if you were to launch a rocket, like NASA did for many years and blew them up and exploded them, smart people, right? And so first principles thinking takes it down and says, like, what does it take to build a rocket? And well, okay, if it takes that, well, why are we exploding it? And can we launch it without exploding it? And here you go. So now he's launching rockets faster than and cheaper than anyone else in the world. And so that takes a longer term view of things. And so we bring first principles thinking along with the think different through the conversations that we have. So let me go to your comment, Max, around leases. There's two ways, and I'm not teaching here, I'm just sharing. If you guys have feedback or comments, put them in there. But there are two ways we get to revenue. It's bringing in new business, new renters, right? Or maximizing the value of the renter we have, renewing it, right? But why do we do leases, right? Think about that. Who's the customer? Well, we've been told to do leases. And by the way, our software says, this is the lease expiration schedule, and this is how they were trained to do it. And oh, by the way, the lender has said, listen, we don't want risk, so we will make the assumption that if there's a contract, it will reduce risk. And we all know that even though that there's a contract, they may not pay, the government may not require them to pay, and they may not even be the right person in the room to pay. So the contract really isn't even that security and that risk in some cases. So the customer that you work with, if you're in a lease, what's stopping you from renewing the lease midstream? Right? What's stopping you from having a multi-year lease? Now, that gets into more commercial where it's longer term and you can't reprice the building and all that stuff. So again, this all goes back to your own investment strategy. But everything right now is being disrupted, the business models, the status quo. And I think it's the time to test everything that we think we know about how we get to the bottom line. And that lease is a great starting point. I'll tell you, this may not work for you. It's worked for me. And I actually did a post on my personal profile today around don't change anything when you take over a company, because I took over a company and they had all month-to-month leases. And I was thinking, this is crazy. But the fascinating thing was they knew they could leave anytime. So there was this continuum. There was never a decision about anything. We moved the rents. Our turnover was down and our revenue kept growing. And there was never this forced situation where they had to make a long-term life decision. And so they knew they could leave, so they never left, right? So although long-term leases can work, also short-term leases can work. No leases can work. We saw that happen with our mobile devices. They used to lock us into contracts. Now we just kind of have this continuity of new payment. Are we financing it? Are we paying for the seller? What are we actually paying for? So I think it's increasing the value of the lease instead of contracting the lease term. And I heard someone say that people don't know how to do pricing. They know how to buy on pricing, but they don't know how to buy on terms. They're not familiar with buying on terms. You can go longer terms and get more value out of it. Maybe in an uncertain time, that's more valuable to you today, longer term, with a qualified resident. So anyway, those are the things I think that question brought up a lot to riff on. But it's pretty interesting when we get to think through these. And then I bring it to Carrie, who chairs the technology for our Multifamily Innovation Council. And I get to run it through him. And he gets to say, well, we can do it this way and we can do it that way. And we're bumping into this problem to make that happen. And so we really get to work through some really fun stuff together. What do you think, Carrie? Short-term leases, long-term leases?
It's kind of like a lease is a legal agreement, right? It's a contract. And what are contracts for? When things go bad. Because as long as you're there and you're paying your rent on time, everything's good. So it has some provisions in it. The term is really to lock in a number. It's the way I look at things. So it depends how fluid you want to be with your number. And it's kind of like Connect Phoenix. It's members. And I know another operator that is strategizing with having buildings in different markets that are highly sought after and letting his residents move from building to another building they have. If hey, I want to go, it's getting cold up north, I want to go spend 3 months in Miami. And if he has a building in Miami, you transfer to Miami and you do it all online. So I know somebody playing with that model right now. So I think things will get interesting. Do I think that we completely do away with leases? No, I think there has to be some kind of contract around the use of the property, the rules. If they don't pay, what happens, and they're occupying the property. What's
do you think that because we've got the lease, we stop selling, we stop marketing, it's not that we stop caring, but if the lease was never invented and you had to renew on the daily that customer, what would change in your operations?
I think that's how hotels operate. I mean, they basically live and die on, are you going to come back? How's your stay? They're sending me things the whole time I'm in a hotel. And then I have the decision, do I want to go back to that hotel and use their services again? I have a favorite hotel when I come over to Phoenix, and I consistently rebook with them because I just like the atmosphere. I like the rooms. I love the service. But the whole time I'm there, it's like, and it's not always on site. It's like, hey, did you know 2 blocks from here, there's this new place that opened. You might want to try it out, a new restaurant or whatever. So I think it's staying engaged. And you're right. Some people sign the lease, and it's kind of like, well, I got you. You've signed up now, and go move in, and we hope you don't call our maintenance too much, and that you pay on time. So I think you're right. I think there's probably a lack of marketing to that existing customer, which happens to live on your property behind the door.
Right, because the lease renewal feels like you got to sell again, and the reality is, if you wait till the end, then you have to resell it. I think there's ways to get creative and reprice them, but we're working through our policies, and sometimes those decisions are hard, to make risks like that, right, inside an organization that has a structure and a policy and things like that. Entrepreneurs, smaller groups can be more swift in how they, if they built today, they don't have the, you mentioned technical debt, but, policy debt, policy debt in what we do. All right. Well, this has been fun. Listen, if you're listening on the podcast, you can get involved in the Multifamily Innovation Advisory Council. If you're a multifamily owner and operator, head on over to multifamilyinnovation.com, click on council, and you can see all that's involved in getting involved with the Multifamily Innovation Council. This has been a recap. This is, what are we calling, Loop 1 of our meeting, and we'll be back with you next week to recap what we do this Friday. All right, guys. We'll see you next time.